And some of you saints who are older, who've walked with Christ a long time, been to church a lot, you really know the Lord, you'll recognize this. Have you ever seen that there be times when it seems like Christ will begin to deal with a man in the community? He may even start coming to church. It's like God's dealing with him. And then all of a sudden, the man stiffens his neck, he rebels, he turns back to the world, and it seems like Christ never visits him again. That's frightening, isn't it? Old preachers used to talk about that a lot. There are times when it seems like even in your Christian life, God will come to you and say, all right, are you ready to take the next step forward? Are you ready to go over the river and go into the land of conquest and take some more territory? And a believer will say, yes, I will. And then God leads them onto greater heights, greater knowledge of Him, greater sense of His presence. Or there are some believers who will say, no, either for fear or for the things of the world, they don't want to go any farther. And it's years before maybe God visits them again. And when He does, they weep. And they think of all the time they've lost. Some have told me that it only takes a few days to get across the wilderness in which Israel spent 40 years. Because the time had come for them to cross the period that God had designated, and they would not.
I just were wondering where this is from the scripture. I just Googled in Bible CC the word once, and I noticed that once God has spoken, twice I've heard this, power belongs to God. In Hebrews 9, Christ died once for the sins of many. In 1 Peter 2 verse 10, you once were not a people, but now you are the people. In Romans 7 verse 9, once Paul was alive apart from the law, but when commandment came, sin became alive and I died. And in Titus 3, the people who Paul was writing to were once foolish, disobedient, and deceived. So they were once unsaved, and at one particular point they were redeemed by God. But this idea, Paul doesn't say you once had a chance where God came and God was like, you want to move on to the next spiritual step? And you were like, no, I don't want to join the gang, God. And God was like, okay, you had your chance. You don't get to hang out with the cool kids now. You had your one chance. What? Like, you had this one chance. Ooh, we blew it. We're depraved by nature. God would know we would reject Him. Washer acts like we're only partially depraved. And like, he sounds like a Pelagian. Oh, will you use this one chance that God will give you in your good nature to exercise your will, to choose Christ, to do all these wonderful things? You've only got one chance. Ooh, spooky dooky, Washer, we're all so scared. Let's listen to Paul Washer before we blow our chance.
Yeah, it sounded pretty... It's a bit smelly what he was saying to me. It didn't sort of sink home to me. I would start taking out my my lollies at that point of the sermon and just start getting into my fruit tingles and whatever else, fruit pastilles and stuff at that point of a sermon. Maybe if I had some pamphlets, I'd pull them out and start reading them.
Any thoughts, Vincent?
Yeah, I'm thinking about Romans chapter 16, and where it says that, now to Him that is the power to establish you according to my gospel and the preaching of Jesus Christ, according to the revelation of the mystery which was kept secret since the world began, but is now made manifest by the scriptures of the prophets, according to the commandment of the everlasting God, made known unto all nations for the obedience of faith. And, I mean, when I see that, that's what I see as that initial manifestation of the calling. Or it being revealed. And it's not like once and for all, like I think you were mentioning Hebrews, the atonement was once and for all. But it's like this one point that its effect, it just continues on and on. It doesn't just like stop and it's all over. Jesus died, and now nobody can be saved because it's all said and done with or whatever. I I mean, I couldn't. I was trying myself to think about anywhere in the scripture that would merit that kind of position, and also, these higher stages of spiritual development. I mean, that's really esoteric. The simplicity is in the gospel and gospel of the cross. I mean,
yeah, I just looked up the word opportunity in the Bible, and
yeah, that's a good word to look up.
Thank you. In Ephesians chapter 4 verse 27, it says, "Do not give the devil an opportunity to work, and do not give way to the evil one." In Romans 7 verse 8, Paul says, "But sin, taking opportunity through the commandment, produced in me coveting of every kind." The Bible seems to talk about men sin, and people get deceived by other people and by the devil. And it also talks about in Galatians 6 verse 10, "So then, while we have opportunity, let us do good to all people." The Bible's talking about how conditional life kind of is. You have to be good to other people to not cause a reproach to the gospel. You have to be careful not to put yourself in situations where, as a man, you will easily fall into a lustful sin, or as a woman, you might be easily deceived or hurt, or so. Just be worldly wise. It's kind of saying, like, be as innocent as doves and as wise as serpents. But Paul Washer is kind of trying to apply it between your relationship and God. Yeah, we have conditional relationships with our parents, with our friends and family, and other believers in terms of, we have to be conditional. But God's relationship is unconditional.
I didn't quite get that. I thought he was saying more like stay on your toes that you won't miss another opportunity to be used by God.
Well, but then he also said at the start, I'll play it back.
Yeah, okay.
And some of you saints who are older, who've walked with Christ a long time, been to church a lot, you really know the Lord, you'll recognize this. Have you ever seen that there be times when it seems like Christ will begin to deal with a man in the community? He may even start coming to church. It's like God's dealing with him. And then all of a sudden, the man stiffens his neck, he rebels, he turns back to the world, and it seems like Christ never visits him again. That's frightening, isn't it?
Ooh, scary. I hope I'm not that man. I better listen.
I've never seen that myself.
Because Romans 8:28 says, and we know that God causes all things to work together for those who love God. This whole idea of God working in unbelievers' lives and hearts, obviously God works everything according to the counsel of His will, according to Ephesians. He works everything, He controls everything, but what's this? God's got like little favorites among the unbelievers, like, I'm going to mess around with this little person. Oh, they're not going to react the way I want to. Ooh. It sounds like God's like an interfering, teacher, or someone like interfering in your life and trying to, you're not good enough, you're not going to cooperate with me. It makes God sound so conditional, and God like acting like us. God's unconditional. While He saw us on the wayside, filthy, rotten, asleep, dead, stupid, He saved us then. He didn't sort of wake us up a little and be like, hey, you want to come with me? You want to reform yourself? Oh, you don't? Okay, go back to sleep. That is not how the Apostle Paul was confronted with Christ once off. Christ died once, men are converted once. None of this working mishmash conditionalism where man has to respond.